The book of Ruth tells the story of a time when God-chosen leaders governed. Set in the period of the Judges, it deals with a time when the Israelites were still committing the sin of idolatry. During this time, Elimelech's family from Bethlehem moved to Moab due to a famine. But tragically, Elimelech and his 2 sons died. Despite this tragedy, Ruth's faith led her to be included in the genealogy of Jesus, making it a message of hope. Bethlehem, the setting of the book of Ruth, means house of bread and is the birthplace of Jesus. Chapter 1 of Ruth recounts how Elimelech, residing in Bethlehem of Judah, moved to the foreign land of Moab due to a famine. There his 2 sons married Moabite women, but within 10 years, Elimelech and his 2 sons died, leaving Naomi and her 2 daughters-in-law behind. In such difficult circumstances, Naomi decided to return to her homeland. But she was concerned about her daughters-in-law, fearing they would face poverty and scorn as foreign women. She urged them to return to their homeland. However, Ruth insisted on staying with her mother-in-law, declaring her faith in God. Eventually, Naomi returned to Bethlehem with Ruth. After returning to Bethlehem, Naomi and Ruth had to survive by gleaning grain. As a foreigner, Ruth did not know where to go, but God's guidance led her to the field of a man named Boaz. Boaz, learning that Naomi had returned with her daughter-in-law Ruth, who was also his relative, helped Ruth by allowing her to gather plenty of grain. Naomi rejoiced at God's guidance when she heard about this. In chapter 3, a few months later, Naomi instructed Ruth to do something. She asked her to request Boaz, who was their relative, to take on the responsibility of a kinsman redeemer. The duty of a kinsman redeemer was for a close relative to buy the property of a deceased family member to keep it within the family, and if there was a widow, to marry her and provide an heir for the deceased relative. Hearing this custom passed down in Israel, Ruth obeyed, and after the barley harvest ended, spent the night at Boaz's feet in the field. In the early morning, Ruth explained her situation to Boaz and asked him to take on the responsibility of a kinsman redeemer. Boaz, hearing Ruth's story, agreed to it. Taking on the duty of a kinsman redeemer, Boaz waited at the city gate to meet a closer relative. This relative initially agreed to redeem Elimelech's property, but declined due to unfavorable conditions for himself. Thus, Boaz became the closest relative and took on the responsibility, marrying Ruth. They had a son, Obed, who became the grandfather of David. Ruth, a woman of faith, was included in the genealogy of Jesus through Boaz.